Powerful Category 4 Hurricane Beryl moved through the Windward Islands today. Now it's in the eastern Caribbean Sea, and there's an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft there, even as we speak, to see what we got. And we'll take a look at that. Of course, the weather in the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states was really nice today with low humidity and sunshine. We'll let you know how long that's going to last. Severe weather in the plains. And it's hot in the South, which isn't exactly breaking news. All of that tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. The revolutionary Tempest weather system is yours for the asking, and you get one. You join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the description to this podcast. The new coupon code is summer 2024, and if you use that, you'll get.
As always, you'll get 10% off. Ta-da!
Ta-da is right. So, all right, so we already set a record for a Category 4 hurricane in June because we never had one before, and that was yesterday. Um, there's a chance that the plane might find this a little stronger and that it's a Cat 5, which would make it the earliest cat. There's been a Cat 5 in July. I forgot what year it was. Elena was the storm. I forgot what, not too many years ago. Um, I think it was in the same year that we had Irma and Maria. So that was what, 2018 or 17?
2017, I believe.
Okay. So there's that. And but either way, I mean, we've got a Category 4 hurricane here at the very beginning of July that just went through the Windward Islands. And you have to wonder, Joe, what that means in the coming months.
I tell you, Joe, it's not looking good. If the water temperatures are already the equivalent of what you'd normally expect in early to mid-September, and here it is now, the beginning of July. Yeah, one has to wonder if we're going to be seeing some all-time record water temperatures as we move into late August and September. And what does that mean for possible hurricane activity? Maybe we'll have to consider a Category 6 hurricane.
Oh, no, we're not doing that. Um, at least we're not doing that. I'm sure other people might try, but no matter. It is a bit jaw dropping. And by the way, if you missed it, we also had Tropical Storm Chris last night that formed in the southwest Gulf of Mexico and uh, hung around for about 6 hours before it moved inland, and that's gone. So if we've already gone through three named storms and all of them in the month of June. So that's kind of interesting. It's been a while since we've had three in the month of June. This has got me a little. Uh, I'm trying to find the right word for it. I just look. The pattern doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stay the same. So we don't know how it's going to play out when we get down the road. We're assuming that the La Nina is going to be helping to engineer a an abundance of tropical cyclones. Uh, you never know. Things could change down the road, and the outcome could be different. We've had active starts to hurricane seasons before, only to when you get into the heart of the season, it just kind of fizzles. So that's not impossible.
No, it's not. But the way things are looking with the unusually warm water temperatures, as you just mentioned, we have a La Nina, which is favorable for hurricane development in the Atlantic Basin. So all we can say is that this indeed will likely be another above normal season for hurricane. I mean, last year we had an El Nino that was supposed to keep the hurricane activity down, and it hardly did. So what can we possibly see this year? We may just very well run down the list of names and maybe go into the secondary list of names after we run through the or run out of names in the first list.
Well, we have a recon there right now, and it just went through the eye from the northeast for the first time. The graphic is from Tropical Tidbits, and the one thing that we can say at the moment, I don't have a pressure. Usually, don't put the pressure there near the center. But uh, the just going by the wind barbs, Joe, we've got the 113 to 137 knot wind barbs that are on the plot here, and the 100 knot winds. I mean, the next color in the lighter pink is 96 to 113. So 100-mile-an-hour winds. That's one thing that's happened in the last 24 hours is that the gales and the hurricane force winds and everything else have expanded. Uh, to where this is no longer a small system. It's a bit more than that. But I'm going to be curious to see. Let's see if there's a new. It's usually on the chart. Okay, so I'm just going to eyeball it here. Bottom black line, Joe, is 935 on the pressure, and it looks like. I mean, I'm just going to estimate. I'm just going to guess here. Probably like 937. Blue line is the flight level wind, okay, at 150 knots. I'm gonna the 8 o'clock advisory should be very interesting. That this may be they may make this a Cat 5 here.
It's quite possible. I don't want to say that. I am hoping that that does not transpire. It'd be interesting to have a Cat 5 this early in the season. As you mentioned, I think we only had one other July storm that reached Category 5 status, but Cat 4 is strong enough for most. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, this is pretty impressive. I mean, it really is. And I'll bring up the satellite loop here. That's well, I got the Hurricane Center's forecast. You might as well go with this. So on the 5 o'clock advisory, it was at 13.2, 63.2. So now it's passed through the Windward Islands. It's on the other side. Some remnant tropical storm warnings are still up for the islands, but now we have hurricane warnings up for Jamaica, and we have tropical storm. I think the blue is the. I'm sorry, tropical storm warnings. Tropical storm warnings for the western half of the south coast of the Dominican Republic and the entire south coast of Haiti, and again all of Jamaica now under a hurricane watch. All right, hurricane watch for Jamaica. So just trying to make sure I got this. My glasses are okay, and the track not much change here. I mean, they still are going with they're going to hold on to this as a major hurricane until 2 a.m. Wednesday, and then they weaken it to under a major when it passes. Uh, they got it passing just south of the south coast of Jamaica, and then crossing the Yucatan Channel and finding its way into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. One thing I wanted to show on the loop, which I have now, gonna give it a quick refresh here so we can have a couple of new images in there. I mean, look at that well-defined eye for one thing. It is perfectly circular. It does have that, it does have that bit of a buzzsaw look to it. And I want to point out, as we look at this loop, take a look to the west in the central Caribbean. You'll notice that there's these blow-off clouds coming off of South America and from Panama, and those are going southwest to northeast. That's where the wind shear is. So it is going to eventually get there, unless that whole trough winds up retreating. But you can see on the satellite loop how those higher cloud tops, you have the lower clouds are going in one direction, east to west. The higher cloud tops are going southwest to northeast. That's the shear that will eventually this system will get into before it gets to Jamaica. So if that shear zone is still there, it would make sense that this would probably weaken as it gets a little bit further to the west. But in the meantime, it's still encased in this ideal environment uh, where we're seeing these, for this time of year, ridiculous observations with respect to the wind and to the pressure.
And the folks over in Puerto Rico are probably breathing a sigh of relief. Although, if you were on the island of Puerto Rico, what you'd probably be seeing right now is a lot of red flags along the coastal beaches, the south coastal beaches, because I'm sure with a Category 4 hurricane passing so close to the island, there must be tremendous rip currents and rough seas that are being generated by that storm. And they're probably going to receive maybe a few squally rain showers over the course of the next 24 hours as the storm again makes not an exceptionally close pass, but close enough so that the storm will be affecting Puerto Rico. But again, not a direct hit, thankfully, for the folks on that island. But if you are on Jamaica, you're watching very, very carefully because this system, again, is going to be coming very close to or skirting right along the Jamaican south coast in the next 48 hours.
So we have the intensity guidance here that actually has one model. This was at 18Z, so between now and 2 a.m. and one model made it a Cat 5. A whole bunch of them everybody else was in the Cat 4 zone. And you'll notice as we move through the next 24 to 96 hours, we see a steady weakening being indicated by the guidance. And actually, a large majority, by the time we get to 96 and 108 hours, so that would be, toward Friday, toward the end of the week. And at this point, it's probably already in the Western Caribbean, heading for the Yucatan. Uh, just about not all, but most of the models actually have it under hurricane strength. So that it shows you that at least what the guidance is what the guidance is indicating with respect to the shear and the model forecast tracks. Now, there are a couple of outliers on the northern end that go to the northern tip of the Yucatan into the Southwest Gulf, and then there's one that crosses the Yucatan on the northern part, then gets into the Gulf of Mexico and takes a sharp turn northward. And I did notice earlier that a couple like the Icon model, for example, was trying to make a turn northward in the western Gulf of Mexico, but the vast majority, the consensus is very tightly clustered uh, into uh, into southern Yucatan, and then on the other side and going into the uh, southwest Gulf of Mexico, and then making landfall in Mexico, which would be the third storm now. If this plays out, this will be the third storm system in a row to make a landfall in pretty much the same place as the other two have.
Yeah, that's one record I don't think that they want to try to one record that I'm sure they don't want to try to produce, which is the most number of hurricanes in a single season for Mexico or tropical cyclones. But that seems to be right now, Joe, the general path of what we're seeing, what we saw for Chris, short lived as it was, and also now with Beryl and possibly other systems. I see that there was one storm um, indicated with a yellow cross on the Hurricane Center map, and that seemed to be showing a similar track, edging again on that west northwest trajectory, which might possibly bring it close to or into Mexico before the next week is over.
Yeah, they've taken there's the system that's behind Beryl. They knocked it down a little bit to a 50% chance in the next 7 days and only 20% in the next 48 hours. Had been a little, it had been higher than that yesterday, saying conditions are now marginally conducive for additional development, but we don't, nothing's there yet that's problematic. We just had Chris, of course, as we said, inland now and long gone. I don't think the 8 o'clock advisory is out yet.
Yeah,
But
the recon that you just showed, Joe, with Beryl. Again, we want to stress it looks like for the most part, this is kind of an atypical pass for the hurricane hunters. It looks like they're heading right toward the area traditionally the strongest part of the hurricane, which is the northeast eye wall. Probably will sample that area and come up with data that possibly will reveal to all of us whether or not we do have a Cat 5. Although William Huber brings up an interesting point. He says, Joe, Joe Rayo, he says, so what's the difference between a high grade category 4 and a low grade category 5? I mean, the difference is subtle probably, but it means in both cases, either a high 4 or a low 5, you're going to have a lot of damage. So, yeah, in
yeah,
one way,
you're sort of at the point where 145 mile an hour wind is incredibly destructive. If it turns out that it's 155, um, it'll probably be a little more destructive, but you're already at the end of the scale anyway, the way I'm looking at it,
yeah,
right?
well, that's the way, that's the way it can be. I mean, again, if you have a home in the path of a storm, even if it's a low category 4, you're in serious trouble. But this is, just to go on record as to just how strong this system is. It's amazing.
Yeah. So the plane is now out now into the southwest quadrant. So again, the new advisory should be out in the next couple of minutes. So we'll come back to this and see what goes on. Meanwhile, it is nice and clear from Maine down to North Carolina, down the Appalachians. Had a actually a pretty sunny day here. I know I got to over 90. I don't know what my high was, but I think I got to over 90. And we've had some clouds develop this evening, uh, which is nice. Takes the edge off. Uh, but really a nice day, low humidity, sunshine in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, back to the Eastern Great Lakes, then you start to get into uh, another weather system here that's moving up through the plains, and this is where we're seeing severe weather issues tonight, which we'll take a look at. But no doubt you had a nice day, Joe. How high did you make 80 today?
I don't think no, I don't think we made 80. It was indeed a beautiful day. It was kind of breezy out there too. At times the winds were really gusty, especially early in the day. And in fact, around noontime, for about a minute, we briefly lost power. I think it was because maybe the winds were so strong that maybe it knocked a tree limb or a tree branch down to hit a power line or a transformer or whatever and temporarily knocked out power. But thankfully, it came back very quickly. But yeah, a breezy day, a cool day, clouds mixing with sun, lots of sunshine, acres of blue in the afternoon. Hard to believe this was the first day of July, but it's not going to be this way all month long. We can already see there will be a buildup of humidity as we move on toward the latter part of the week, just in time for the big 4th of July or Independence Day holiday weekend.
Radar's quiet. You got to go all the way down to northern Florida and parts of coastal South Carolina and Georgia to find some showers. And we've got some storms, showers and storms now, and some severe thunderstorm warnings and a tornado warning that's popped up in south central Nebraska. Also seeing some heavier storms in central, south, and North Dakota, and some rain in northernmost Minnesota. Also a little bit of rain in eastern Iowa. And looking at showers in Wyoming and a couple of thunderstorms in the mix there too, and in Idaho, up in Montana, down to Colorado. Actually, quite a bit of shower and thunderstorm activity, and even a lot of flash flooding going on in New Mexico, especially in the western half of the state, and also in eastern Arizona. So a little bit of monsoonal action, Joe. There's a weathered word with the three syllables, monsoonal.
Yeah. Well, it's that time of the year. If you live in Arizona and New Mexico, July and August are the monsoon months, and this is, I mean, if you've never experienced a summer monsoon in either one of those two states, it's really interesting. In fact, out there, Joe, in the desert Southwest, they don't refer to them necessarily as thunderstorms. They refer to them as electrical storms. And if you really want to see spectacular, you know, pyrotechnics displays courtesy of nature. Sometimes these storms they have out in the Southwest with these lightning bolts are really quite amazing. Sometimes you get something called dry lightning, which, I mean, there's no significant rain associated with them, but sometimes you can get damage done. Just lightning bolt will hit, trees and maybe even start a fire or two. So all of that, and of course, with the possibility in some cases heavy localized downpours, which is associated with these monsoons. So it's pretty interesting out in the Southwest, July and August. If you ever decide to take a vacation, you say, oh, let's go to the Grand Canyon. Let's go see the meteor crater in Arizona. Let's go out to Albuquerque. Nice places to go to. Don't go in July and August. This is not the time of the year to go out to the Southwest deserts.
Tornado watch up now for south central Nebraska in the red box. We've got two severe thunderstorm watches from northwest Nebraska through central south and into central North Dakota. So that's all the severe weather that's playing out there. The Storm Prediction Center has that most of that area in a slight risk, and the tornado risk is 2 to 5%. So most of that tornado watch covers the 5% zone. And before I go a little further, Johnny Quest hitting super chat tonight, Joe. and makes a good point about the fact that you have to do something to nature has to do something to get rid of all that excess heat in the oceans, and hurricanes are really the most effective way to do it. And that's correct. Uh, Hurricanes are a heat distribution mechanism. To
Mother Nature's way of blowing off steam is through hurricanes. Hurricanes serve a very important purpose in nature. People say, "Oh, they're horrible." Yeah, they're horrible. They're only horrible if you live in the path of any of these things. And of course, for people who live in the Florida Peninsula, for example, or along the immediate coastline of the southeast or mid-Atlantic states, or down in the Caribbean, I mean, it's horrible because you're living in places where the hurricanes tend to move through. If you stay away from those areas, if Florida, for example, over the last 30 or 40 years didn't build up, put luxurious hotel and homes and accommodations right along the immediate coast, maybe we wouldn't have these tragedies every so often in terms of, great damage and fatalities or whatever. But, they don't want to listen. Oh, look at the beautiful, I want that view of the ocean, that view of the surf. Well, if you do, this is the thing that you have to be concerned about, or the hurricanes, these big storms that come along. But again, that's the way nature works. To get rid of all of that excess or surplus heat built up in the atmosphere and especially in the oceans during the summertime, hurricanes let loose with all of that energy and moisture, and that's the way the Earth does it. When, as I said, the Mother Earth blowing off steam.
David Schwartz hitting super chat tonight and posting the 8 o'clock advisory, Joe, 155 maximum sustained winds. So a 13.464 top winds of 155, a pressure of 938. West northwest at 21 is the motion. The headline is NOAA Hurricane Hunters find Beryl even stronger as it moves quickly across the southeastern Caribbean. Hurricane warnings are now out for Jamaica. So we have a hurricane warning that is up for Jamaica. And this is just looking at the advisory in terms of miles. It's 575 miles east southeast of the Isla Pieta, Beata, of the Dominican Republic, or 910 miles east southeast of Kingston, Jamaica. As I said, top wind's 155, moving west northwest or 290 degrees at 21 miles per hour. Your home barometer is actually what my barometer reads up here before you adjust it for sea level, Joe. 27.70. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's that low. It's probably closer to 28 right now, but 27.70 is the central pressure on Beryl. I think, what is it, 156 for a Cat 5? I mean, it's virtually a Cat 5 here.
I mean, it's just like a hairline, a trifle below.
I mean, I'm sure they probably had a conversation at the Hurricane Center saying, should we make this a Cat 5 or should we not make this a Cat 5?
They may be waiting for the 11 o'clock advisory, which is the intermediate advisory at 8 o'clock, but the primary 11 o'clock advisory for them to announce that it is a Category 5 storm.
Chuck Cardillo hitting super chat, and I think you make a good point here, Chuck. In fact, the ocean water temperatures around the Cabo Verde Islands have actually dropped in the last week because of upwelling. But he says if we have above average hurricanes early in the season, it could produce enough upwelling for fewer tropical developments later in the season. Now, on the other side of that is that the upwelling oftentimes is a very short term impact that lasts for a few days or maybe a week. And then the water just, once it calms down, it just gradually, it quickly warms back up. So if you think back to the year I mentioned earlier with Elena being a Cat 5 in the coming out of the tropical Atlantic in the middle of July, um, that was followed up by a couple of several Category 5 hurricanes after that. Well, Irma, Maria, Jose was a borderline Cat 5 at one point. So, um, assuming that that's the same year that occurred. So it's a short term. Short term, yes, the upwelling will cool, but it doesn't necessarily mean it stays like that for the long haul. As far as just to go back to SPC, just right here, uh, for tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center has a slight risk and also an area of enhanced risk from northern Missouri, northeastern Kansas, dripping down into central Kansas, southeast Nebraska, and much of Iowa. And this also comes with a 2 to 5% tornado risk. And of course, no thunderstorm activity at all from Maine down through the middle and even into parts of the South Atlantic states and in the Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley. No boomers there. And then we go to day three, which is Wednesday into Thursday. We still have uh, no thunderstorms being forecast from Maine down to northern South Carolina. We have a marginal to slight risk westernmost New York, westernmost PA, crossing down through Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, where you get into the slight risk, and it's a swinging back through Missouri and Kansas, and then it becomes slight risk again in northwest Kansas up into west central Nebraska. So this is how it's playing out as far as severe weather is concerned. And I think they had something on the day four. Yeah, in Missouri and Kansas on day four that they have a implied 15% risk in their long range.
Yeah, they're saying that relatively good agreement among the models that a shortwave trough and a strong jet at its base will overspread the north central Great Plains toward the upper Midwest on Thursday. Thursday, of course, is the 4th of July, and the last thing you want to see is a major summer holiday impacted by the threat of severe weather. But that unfortunately looks like it may set up across much of Missouri and also into portions of eastern Kansas and a small section of southeastern Nebraska. I see, Joe, that they have a 15% risk of some severe weather activity on Independence Day in that part of the country. So if they feel that confident now on the day four, you just know that in the coming days ahead, they're going to be elaborating more as to the severe threat in the nation's midsection, the nation's heartland, on this, the 4th of July, Independence Day 2024.
You see the shear zone. Just to go back to Beryl for a moment. Uh, you see the strong winds to the west in the central Caribbean Sea. Uh, that is actually retreating as Beryl moves westward, but it doesn't disappear altogether. So there is some shear that's going to impact the storm when it gets closer to the Dominican Republic, and then the GFS brings it perilously close to the south coast. I don't think you're going to see this as a Cat 5 or Cat 4 or even a Cat 3, maybe if it gets the shear it's strong enough. It might weaken down to something a bit less than that, but we'll see. And then as we move on to the west, as it goes toward the Yucatan Peninsula, again, some shear, but it's not, uh, it might not be enough to rip it apart completely, but there's enough there to probably weaken it some more as it goes into the Yucatan and then eventually emerges down to the southwest Gulf, and the GFS wants to take it in into Mexico. What's kind of interesting here, I know, and I saw this yesterday, noticing it yesterday, how these upper troughs at the 250 millibar level, and this is a testament to the La Nina and what it does. Instead of having these things in that level of the atmosphere with strong westerlies moving from west to east, these systems are actually moving from east to west, and these troughs are actually all retrograding westward. So there's not a lot of wind shear in general across the Atlantic Basin, particularly as you get, we roll on into the, through this. I'm just kind of going through this loop. There are a lot of areas here where the upper level winds are very light in the Atlantic and also down in the Gulf of Mexico in parts when in about a week, 10 days or so. But it is this is the kind of setup here in the upper atmosphere, which I've always argued is probably more important what goes on upstairs as far as tropical cyclone development. Yes, water temperatures are really important and all the rest of it, but at the end of the day, you've got to have the dynamics aloft, and you've got to have, you can't have westerly winds blowing across from Mexico to Africa, because you're not going to get tropical cyclones to form in that sort of environment. And this view that the model is showing is telling you exactly the opposite here.
And in fact, somebody, let me just go back on the chat board, um, mentioned a term that I am pretty well familiar with. Just a moment here. Well, somebody on the chat board mentioned, oh yeah, Rich Rothmansky, mentioning a tut low, Tutt low, causing that shear. And if you're wondering what tut means, it's a tropical upper tropospheric trough. And that again is causing the shear that Joe just mentioned that may eventually affect Beryl in the coming days ahead. I'm well acquainted with that term, Joe, because in 1991, I was the onboard meteorologist for a cruise in and around the Hawaiian Islands for a solar eclipse, and there was 95% chance of clear weather climatologically for the big island of Hawaii for the eclipse, and that 5%, the 5% included a tut. They said, well, it's very unusual to have a tut. We rarely ever see a tut develop in July. Guess what? It developed on the night before the eclipse, and everybody on Hawaii Island, or not everybody, but most people, got screwed by getting clouds and even a few showers. Fortunately, on the ship that we were on, we were able to move away from the island and into clear sky. But I learned very quickly what the term tut was. Tut, tut. And in this case, Rich Rotmansky bringing it up again all these years later, more than 30 years later, saying that that is causing the shear that may affect Beryl in the coming days ahead.
Meanwhile, as we move through this week, the big dry high overhead on Tuesday. The dew points don't really come up very much until we get to Thursday, and then they shoot up to the upper 60s to 70, and temperatures also will climb. And by the time we get to Thursday, we'll be in the upper 80s to low 90s. It's going to be very warm to hot. It's going to be steamy. Is it going to be excessive heat? No, it's not quite the upper air pattern for excessive heat, but it's enough to keep you, get you to the upper 80s and low 90s. And as far as thunderstorms are concerned, there's a dying little trough that comes through Wednesday night. Most of the stuff dies off in western New York and Pennsylvania, so I'm not really too concerned about that. I think the 4th of July should be okay. There might be some storms down, say, West Virginia, Virginia, and Maryland, but I think everybody to the north should be fine. Uh, the next chance, probably, I would say maybe Saturday and Sunday, where we've got what looks like a bit of a warm front going by on Saturday, and then some sort of weak cold front for Sunday with some showers and storms, or at least maybe later Saturday into Sunday morning. Anyway, if you want to use this model run, and then we're kind of in a no man's land aloft next week. There's no real push of dry air behind that, so it probably opens the door for opportunities for showers and storms, and from time to time scattered around, and very warm to borderline hot conditions, probably continuing into the first part of the next week before we get any kind of, important cold front. That may not come till probably the end of next week, if you want to believe what the models are doing.
Well, I threw in a chance, small as it is. I threw in a mention on my Facebook forecast on Thursday of a chance for a late shower popping up, only because it's going to be getting increasingly more humid, quite a bit more humid on Thursday compared to Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And, it's a holiday, and you don't want to surprise anybody. So you mentioned the possibility, I mentioned the possibility there might be a shower popping up. Although most areas probably will get away without seeing anything. On Friday, well, I mentioned the possibility was a little bit better for a late day or afternoon shower popping up. Your best possibility, it looks like it's going to be Saturday, when the threat will be more than just a chance. I think there'll be quite a bit of shower activity around, especially in the afternoon and evening. And then for Sunday, as a cold front moves in and through, we may see showers linger into the early part of the day Sunday, but hopefully if the front pushes far enough to the east, we'll get into a drier and maybe a slightly less humid airflow. So maybe later in the day Sunday, or the second half of Sunday, may turn out to be the best weather of the extended holiday weekend: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Two more super chat hits to mention. I forgot to mention Birder Lady, who hit the tip jar earlier. Thank you, Birder Lady. Happy July, she says. And Ken Musillo hitting super chat tonight. So everybody's got maybe some extra dough and they're throwing it in the tip jar as the new month begins. So here we are. Um, Back up full screen. I just want to, just really quickly, I'm going to just check something here. And so that first pass, the plane had 940 out. This is probably behind, so I'm sure the Hurricane Center gets the data out. We get it maybe 10 minutes later or 15 minutes later. But the first pass had 940, so they have 938 on the advisory. Uh, but William Uber said, Bill, it's people like round numbers. So you never hear them say, you're right. I mean, they never put advisory saying maximum sustained winds are 102.5 miles an hour. So that's either 100 or 105. It's just, human beings for some reason like round numbers. And so they like to make it easier to say 100, 105, 110. It's just the nature of things. So anyway, you have Thriller Jeopardy tonight, do you not?
I'll check. I did not see anything from Scott though, but I will check to see if I do have it. Hang on. Let's see. When did he send this? Hmm. Could it be that far off? Tuesday, 8:51 p.m. Did we do this already? On Village of the Yeah, I think we already did
Okay,
this
so
one.
I think he's on his way. He's on his way to South Jersey for a few days. So maybe today's a travel day. So we didn't get anything. Okay, that's fine. Scott always, well, he provides. Oh, wait, hold it. Hang on. Breaking news. Uh, let's see. Oh, okay, because he just sent me a message. Speak of the devil, and so he's going to Wildwood next week. And then after Sunday, we'll return Monday, July the 8th. Oh, so he's on his way down now, I guess. All right. And his mom is getting better, which is what most importantly, and what we really like to hear that Mother Briller is improving, which is good. So, anyway, I don't have much else to talk about here. We ran through the hurricane, so, we're good with that. And weather is quiet in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states and even in the South Atlantic states. So we're good with that. So I think we can say, Joe, that the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow, the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Get one and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the description of this podcast. The coupon code. What's the coupon code, Joe?
Summer 2024.
And if you use it, you will get
10% off.
But if you don't use it, you won't get
10% off.
And if you think about using it, you might get
10% off. What is this? Alfina say?
yes. So you could mention those. We'll give one more big thank you to those who hit the tip jar tonight.
Well, I have
Oh, you don't
here.
have the list?
I have Ken Musillo. He was among them. Chuck Cardillo. We have Burger Lady and David Schwartz. And who else? We had Johnny Quest.
That is correct.
And anybody else hit it earlier on in the show? I don't go that quite far back. Am I missing anybody, Joe? Or
Nope, you got them all. You got them
okay,
all. So, all right, everybody have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, no show on Thursday. So after Wednesday, we'll be off until Sunday. So no show on Thursday. Just a reminder.
we're declaring our independence from doing a
We
show.
are. Yes. All right, folks. Have a great night. Ta ta.
Bye bye.